Hi, I'm Sarah Kalman with City TV. Welcome to this edition of Inside Santa Barbara, the city's only news magazine show. We bring you up to date on the city's most significant issues, projects, and events. It can be a challenge to find parking on a congested street. In our next story, we show you ways to relieve some parking tension and improve street safety in your neighborhood.
When parking on your street, it's important to consider how it affects others in your neighborhood. Are you taking up space with a vehicle that never gets driven? Is your vehicle creating a blind spot for others pulling out of their driveway? These tips and many more will help with the parking congestion and improve safety on your street.
The most common complaint that people call about is blocking driveways. We've tried to address some of those issues by adding red curb at the driveways so that people are able to maneuver out of their driveways. Another big call that we get for complaints is people storing too many vehicles and saving spaces on the street, which is not very neighborly and can really impact a neighborhood that's already overcrowded.
There's three big potential issues that we can have within a neighborhood, especially with lots of cars that are being parked on the street. One of those is an obvious, which is the red zones that people either intentionally or unintentionally park in. And the reason for those red zones is primarily a safety factor. Almost 90% of the time when there's a red zone that's painted on a curb, it has everything to do with safety and not necessarily because the city doesn't want you to park there. Those red zones that are primarily around those intersections are so that people that are actively driving and pulling into those intersections have a clear line of sight for oncoming traffic. That ultimately will reduce traffic collisions within the city so that drivers are able to clearly see down each side of the roadway and proceed safely through the intersection.
Another problem residents in the surrounding neighborhood face is when vehicles are parked blocking the sidewalk. This is an obstruction to pedestrians, such as a parent pushing a stroller or someone in a wheelchair who may not be able to squeeze through and may need to roll into the street in order to get around.
Another issue that we see within the neighborhood here in the city of Santa Barbara is vehicles that are parked 2 feet, maybe even 3 feet away from the curb. California state law says that you have to park within 18 inches from the curb. That creates a serious traffic hazard for vehicles that are actually on the roadway driving and could potentially cause a traffic collision.
A similar issue is when an oversized vehicle, like a work truck, mobile home, or trailer, extends into the street because it's too wide. This is dangerous for bicyclists because they may suddenly move into the adjacent driving lane without warning. It also causes cars approaching the oversized vehicle to cross into oncoming traffic.
One of the third issues that we also see within neighborhoods is vehicles that are parked blocking driveways, public and both private driveways. It's difficult for those residents that live within the neighborhood that park their vehicles in the driveway, and maybe your bumper of your vehicle, or sometimes you may not see the driveway parking at night, blocks the entire driveway, creating an issue for that resident who might be trying to leave to go to work or a doctor's appointment, therefore having them have to wait an extended period of time potentially to call law enforcement, have us respond, and potentially tow the vehicle that's blocking the driveway, preventing that resident from exiting or entering their private driveway.
Something that many people are confused about is double parking, which is only allowed for commercial vehicles when loading or unloading product or passengers. As an example, it is not allowed for ordinary drivers when dropping off kids at school or when waiting to pick someone up.
Sometimes people don't necessarily think that there's a public safety aspect with parking rules and regulations, but that's absolutely not the case. Safety is the number one priority that is centered around parking laws and regulations. By being courteous to your neighbor and courteous to the community within the neighborhood that you live, thinking about where it is that you park your vehicle, especially in heavily congested areas where you might be able to fit 2 or 3 vehicles within a section of the roadway that you'd like to park. Please remember to try and pull as forward or as back as possible to allow as many cars as possible to park within a neighborhood, especially in neighborhoods that have parking congestion in them.
If you own a vehicle that isn't driven often but is taking up space on the street, park in the garage or in your driveway so that the unused vehicle isn't taking up shared parking space in the street.
To report a vehicle parking problem, you want to call the non-emergency parking line of the police department. That's 805-882-8900. Another common thing that people report are abandoned vehicles that have parked longer than 72 hours. And the phone call for that at the police department is 805-897-2413.
I think it all comes down to kindness when we think about not just ourselves, but how this may affect someone else in the community. I really believe that having that in the forefront of your mind will really make things better for a neighborhood and also the community here in Santa Barbara.
We hope you found those tips helpful. If you would like to learn more about parking around the city, head to the website santabarbaraca.gov/parking. And now we continue our homelessness video series with a story about long-term permanent housing solutions. See how the city of Santa Barbara and SB Act is getting individuals off the street and into a stable home. Homelessness is an issue that's currently being addressed in the city of Santa Barbara. SB Act and other homelessness services are working in collaboration with city officials, residents, and business leaders to achieve a common goal: getting individuals off the street and into long-term housing.
As we prioritize homelessness as a crisis now, it's really helpful for us to have that level of focus and spotlight on it. And it's allowing people to be more motivated and more steadfast in their engagement. But again, we're still dealing with the complexity of the system.
So we do have our PLHA funding that's coming up, and that stands for Permanent Local Housing Allocation. And that is a new source of funding that the city has obtained.
The Permanent Local Housing Allocation Fund was granted to the city by the California Department of Housing and Community Development to support eligible housing and homelessness activities. To receive the grant, the city came up with a 5-year plan, and part of the 5-year plan was to contract with CityNet, a nonprofit outreach service provider that provides street outreach to homeless individuals.
The goal of our organization is to end street-level homelessness. No one should have to sleep out on the streets at night, and so our goal is to come out and meet with individuals where they're at, connect them to supportive services, and the ultimate goal of permanent housing.
The count was about 900 total. There's a percentage that's chronic, meaning they've been out here for a year plus. But you also have a family population, a youth population. You've got survivors of human trafficking that make up the population. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. And your solutions kind of have to reflect that as well.
Each outreach provider adjusts their approach and targets it towards a specific client's experience.
A lot of times, because of their traumatic events in their lives, it really takes time to establish a trusting relationship to where our case managers from CityNet can help. Some homeless don't seem very accepting of services, but it's usually because they just don't trust from what had happened previously in their lives. And so that event does really take a toll on trying to help and assist them with case management services that they need.
And Courtney is a perfect success story of what outreach and the PLHA can do for someone struggling with homelessness.
In April, the county took us in, and we were the first ones before they started what was called the Room Key Project. We started out in the Orange Tree Hotel for a month. Then for May, we went to the Lemon Tree. And then by June, we were in with all the other people who were in the Room Key Project. That's when we started working with the housing people from the county. I was already on all housing lists and everything, so they just had to update all of my information. And I went for my first interview to the Riviera Hotel, and I just liked the one room that they showed me that was open. And once they finished everything, getting me a grant that follows me wherever I go, it was just a blessing in disguise, and had everything I needed by the last week of August to move in but I started paying my rent as of the beginning of September, and I have faithfully ever since. And they're wonderful people there, and it's a wonderful place.
Working with CityNet and providing outreach to individuals on the street isn't the only component to getting individuals into long-term housing. The PLHA also funds additional staff resources to help keep people in their homes in the first place.
We are going to hire a new full-time rental housing mediation program specialist in order to assist us further in trying to help tenant and landlord issues so as to retain housing for them so that they don't fall into homelessness as well. So that's considered homelessness prevention.
Overall, SB Act, CityNet, city leaders, and others impacted by the issue of homelessness continue to work hard to get individuals experiencing homelessness into long-term housing, and each small step along the way makes the process worth it.
The city has also went into partnership with the Housing Authority and assisted on acquisition of property at 110-116 East Coda Street. The Housing Authority is in process of applying to the state for low-income housing tax credits to develop 28 studio units for homeless housing. So that will be very pertinent to our efforts of trying to get people off the streets and permanently housed.
If you missed our last story in our homelessness video series, you can watch it in our previous episode of Inside Santa Barbara online at santabarbaraca.gov/citytv. Public bike share programs are popping up all over the globe. Electric bikes, also known as e-bikes, are a great way to get around town. Let's check out the city's bike share pilot program.
Way back in 2017, there were a number of rogue scooter launches in the city, and at that time, Transportation Planning and Public Works went to council and said, what's your guidance on this? What do we want to do? We heard that there is a lot of interest in shared mobility. At that time, we heard that scooters weren't fully evolved yet. It wasn't fully ready for public. And we also heard that council was very interested in trying a bike share here in the city.
The city's bike share pilot program is to provide an alternative and active transportation option for the public to easily move about the city, based on a network of publicly available rental bikes located throughout the city. The city contracted with BCycle in 2020 to provide the 3-year pilot program.
Bike share is a great option for those moments when it's maybe just a little bit too far to walk, but it's also too close to drive. So you've got an easy, convenient, and relatively quick option that you can use without also breaking too much of a sweat because you have some pedal assist.
Pedal assist e-bikes give you power when you pedal. The maximum speed for a BCycle e-bike is 17 miles per hour in the city of Santa Barbara. And they're safe and flexible for a lot of riders to use and hit a larger demographic.
Currently, there's a fleet of 140 pedal assist e-bikes with 50 stations throughout the city, and there's been about 15,000 riders who have taken around 81,000 trips covering 320,000 miles.
We are currently about a year into the pilot program. BCycle officially launched in the city of Santa Barbara on January 28th, 2021. There's still 2 more years remaining in the pilot program to see how bike share fits in the city of Santa Barbara.
2021 has been such a fascinating year for us. Not only did we launch during a pandemic, our ridership and implementation of the bike share went off very successfully. We've seen ridership just continue to grow as we expand, and we're really excited to potentially regionalize the program and are having conversations with different entities.
Don't worry if you've never been on an e-bike. They're user-friendly and fun to ride. Plus, there are payment options to fit everyone's needs.
All you have to do is download the BCycle mobile app in your Android or iOS app store. And then once you download it, you purchase a membership, and there will be a map of stations. Locate the station closest to you, go over to that station, use your phone, tap it to the dock, and then you're ready to go on the bike.
and then ride it to their destination and turn it in at that point. So you're only paying essentially for a one-way rental for the bike.
We have 3 different membership options. The first is $7 per every 30 minutes. The second and third option are actually annual and monthly memberships. Annual is $150, monthly is $30.
To rent a BCycle, you must be 18 years or older. City staff worked closely with BCycle to identify locations for each bike station based upon 3 main parameters.
Sufficient sidewalk space to ensure pedestrian access, access to key destinations, and also we'd like to maintain visibility for drivers on city streets. So those are the 3 main ones that we try to hit when choosing a location. Some of our other locations were actually selected using community feedback. So people would request, hey, I want a bike share station here adjacent to my business, and we can work with them to come up with a solution.
The great thing about the bike share program is that you don't need to worry about costly bike repairs, and the bikes are thoroughly cleaned and maintained.
Our e-bikes are touched once a day, and our entire field tech team is out 7 days a week, touching, sanitizing the bikes, cleaning them, and swapping e-bike batteries.
It's not always a smooth ride. The bike share pilot program has faced some challenges to implementation, but the benefits outweigh those challenges.
We've seen some distinct supply chain issues that have caused delays in implementation for bike share stations. We've also had some challenges in implementation as far as site selection, working with review to ensure that the bike share locations are meeting all of our parameters for installation. And we've also faced challenges with theft and vandalism. One of the benefits of bike share in the city of Santa Barbara is that it allows a public, easily accessible transportation option that can be used for a lot of different things. You can use it for errands, you can use it for accessing our beautiful coastline here. Bike share has the potential to reduce parking demand in congested areas. And honestly, in the city of Santa Barbara, it's a really nice transportation option, in this beautiful city we live in, to be able to hop on a bike, ride across town to your destination, leave the bike there, and just have a little bit more flexibility in what you're doing. One of the things that we'll be doing is providing annual updates to City Council on the progress to date of the program, and just kind of understanding some of the ridership metrics so that we can assess how well the program is doing and what the performance is at this point, which will help determine kind of the best course of action for a bike share pilot program in the city of Santa Barbara.
The city will be installing more e-bike stations soon. The Bike Share Pilot Program provides an affordable point-to-point e-bike ride with easy access to many local destinations. We'll be right back.
The last time I tried to find housing, some buildings didn't have a wheelchair ramp for me to go see an apartment. So besides the high cost of housing, that made apartment hunting even more difficult.
Those people are trying to make my apartment complex wheelchair accessible. I don't know why I have to change the layout of my apartment complex for just 1 or 2 people. They should just go find somewhere else to live.
Thousands of people rely on accessible housing. If you don't want to be like this landlord, then contact the Independent Living Resource Center to find out how you can make your apartment complex accessible to everyone. When the weather changes, do you know how much water your plants need? For landscaping text alerts, subscribe to the county-wide free message service. You'll receive weekly texts with a water percent adjust recommendation to help you conserve water and save money by reducing your watering during cooler weeks. You'll also be notified about upcoming WaterWise classes. A typical seasonal or monthly adjustment isn't precise enough, so you may be overwatering and wasting money. A weekly adjustment is better for the health of your landscape, and it's so simple. Just look for the Seasonal Adjust, Water Budget, or Percent feature on your irrigation controller. And finally reduce the percentage based on the recommendation for that week. To sign up for weekly landscape alerts, text WaterWise to 855-510-0000. 0241. Welcome back. The city recently held a ribbon cutting for the long-awaited Las Positas MoDOC multi-use path. Let's check out why people are celebrating.
All right, here we go. The ribbon cutting for the multi-use pathway.
The Las Positas MoDOC multi-use path is officially finished, and the excitement was felt by the many people in attendance as Mayor Randy Rouse cut the red ribbon, revealing the freshly completed pathway and new connection to the Arroyo Burro open space.
Well, the Las Positas MoDOC multi-use path is a 2.6-mile path that is for walkers, runners, and cyclists. The purpose of the project is to provide a safe path for all of our active transportation users. Along these roads of Las Positas and MoDOC are highly speed travel roads, not making it comfortable for all cyclists of ages and abilities. This path provides that option now to navigate the MoDOC and Las Positas corridors separated from vehicles. Not only does this path provide local connections, it provides regional connections as well. It is part of the region's coast route connecting all the way from Goleta to Ventura. And so it's so great now that we have a higher level facility along this very, very popular corridor.
The connections the bicycle path provides will get a lot of use, and another great feature is its connection to the Arroyo Burro open space.
So the city purchased this project or this property and turned it into an open space several years ago. And at that time, the creek habitat and upland habitat was in a degraded state. It had been kind of used by the last property owner as storage and illegal, like BMX bike tracks were out here. So we did a phase 1 project which really focused on restoring the riparian habitat along Arroyo Burro and creating floodplain habitat. And then as part of phase 2, we were focused on restoring this Campanile tributary drainage that had had a lot of illegal grading done to it in the past, as well as this pedestrian bridge, which is a huge connection to the Las Positas multi-use pathway.
The community is already seeing the many benefits of the pathway.
Well, the benefits are multiple. Number one, we have a safe Class 1 bike lane off of the traffic path, which is fabulous, and it's also a walking path. We have all this creek restoration. We have, like Cameron Benson said, almost 1,600 linear feet. We have a bridge over to the new open space area so people don't feel like they've got to park on Allen Road in the residential zone to go there. So this is such a huge community benefit. The connectivity goes all the way from Goleta and eventually down into Ventura. So it's really ambitious, but it really is a way to move forward in getting people out and about and being able to recreate in probably the most benign atmosphere you can think of. This is fabulous.
Go for a run, bike ride, or long walk along the multi-use path and have some fun. And don't forget to take the pedestrian bridge to the newly renovated open space. In our next story, see how a new water project, the BCycle link, is improving water quality and enhancing resiliency in Santa Barbara. If you've traveled on Garden Street the past couple months, you may have noticed a lot of construction in the street. It's for a new water project, the BCycle link, and over 1,650 feet of pipe has already been installed.
The BCycle link project connects our BCycle plant to our Cater surface water treatment plant by installing a new 24-inch pipeline, connecting it to an existing pipeline, and ultimately conveying desalinated water throughout our entire water system for all of our customers.
We will walk you through the project area with the map on your screen. You can see the existing pipeline connecting to the Cater water treatment plant here. Over here, the blue line shows where construction began, on Garden between Mission and Valerio. Construction then continued here on these 3 blocks of Garden Street, heading towards Alameda Park. Then traveling here up to Olive Street, down on Olive Street, then over here to Calle Cesar Chavez, which will ultimately connect to the Charles E. Meyer desalination plant.
The project benefits the whole community. Currently, desalinated water only reaches certain residents, really in the lower elevations of our water system. Conveying the water to the Decatur water treatment plant will allow us to improve water quality, enhance resiliency. We'll be able to move water throughout our water service area once we install the desal link pipe.
The Desal Link project improves the resiliency of the water system by connecting our desalinated water from the Charles E. Meyer plant and surface water supplies from Lake Cachuma, Gibraltar Reservoir, and state water.
Resiliency is important because it allows us to use our supplies to the maximum benefit of the whole community. It allows us to blend water, our surface supplies and our desalinated water supplies, and move desalinated water throughout our entire service area. In the case of an emergency, this is an added supply. If we were to ever have an issue with water being conveyed from Lake Cachuma or Lake Gibraltar, this water at the Decatur water treatment plant will help augment all our supplies.
Water resiliency and improved water quality is a huge benefit to the community. And you'll see active construction on the project weekdays from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. through next winter.
Yeah, so installing a large diameter pipeline in a crowded city street presents a lot of challenges. There's other utilities. The pipeline is about 10 feet deep. It's 24 inches of diameter. The trench alone is 6 feet. And then there's some other work that you have to do in order to restore the surface of the street. So lots of challenges there. We've put a lot of quality control measures in place to make sure that the pipeline's properly installed and supported in its new environment.
Because the new desal link will be installed under existing utilities, the city is taking extra steps to ensure all private sewer laterals and water line connections are maintained to properties in the project area.
What many people don't understand is that sewer laterals are owned by the property owner, but they're in the city street. We videoed every sewer lateral along the route of the pipeline, so that way we can see the condition of the sewer lateral before, and then we're going to video the laterals after the project as well, so that way we can monitor the condition of the sewer lateral.
With the precautions in mind, construction is being done in 3 block sections. Each area will be close to traffic, and some driveway access to homes will be restricted during active construction times.
This project's primarily being supported through the disaster relief funds through the Thomas Fire settlement, and the remaining balance will be funded through the water fund.
Water resiliency and quality is a great addition to the city, and we anticipate the project to wrap up in early 2023. For more information, head to the project website, santabarbaraca.gov/desalink. What's smaller than the eraser on your pencil, larger than 1 nanometer, and found nearly everywhere? It's microplastics, and we'll show you what the Creeks Division has learned about their impacts on our watersheds here at home. They're in your everyday life, to the most isolated places on Earth. They're microplastics, and they're everywhere.
If you come up to this and you have your lens, you'll see like a little dot of light.
Microplastics, as their name implies, are very small pieces of plastic. So the definition per the state of California defines microplastics as pieces of plastic that are less than 5 millimeters but greater than 1 nanometer in any of their 3 dimensions. So for reference, you can think of the eraser on a number 2 pencil. That's about 5 millimeters in diameter.
They could be intentionally made that size, or they can end up being that size. So that's what we know as a primary microplastic and a secondary microplastic. So primary microplastics are intentionally made to be within those size dimensions. Some great examples of that are microbeads that are used in detergents. Great example is glitter. And a secondary microplastic are actually microplastics that break off of larger pieces of plastic. So they could break off of our piece of clothing as a fiber. They could break off of water bottles, for example. So that is what we know as microplastics. They've been found in glaciers, they've been found in stormwater, they've been found in our drinking water, they've been found everywhere.
And the big question is, what do these microplastics mean? Not only to the environment, but to human health as well.
There is some evidence to suggest that microplastic pollution in surface waters, soils, and sediments may impact the microbial diversity and function in those matrices. So that could relate to nutrient cycling. So think of like the carbon cycle or the nitrogen cycle. And so this can impact negatively the delivery of really essential ecosystem services. So broadly, that could be how well our crops grow in an agricultural area, or how much carbon becomes locked into our soils and sediments, which directly would relate to climate change.
Potential impacts on agriculture and climate change are not the only concern scientists have when it comes to microplastic pollution. They're also studying how animal populations may be impacted.
There's an interesting anecdote on how they may potentially be affecting wildlife, specifically coho salmon. So a research project was done in the Pacific Northwest, whereby they noticed that coho salmon population was declining rapidly. So came this question like, what is it leading to their population decline? And they found out, because where they would spawn would be right next to urban roadways, that small pieces of tires would wash away into these streams or like these waterways. It turns out that the very thing that makes plastics not break down very easily in the environment, an antioxidant known as 6-PPD, that when it is out in the environment, it reacts with ozone, and you have this transformed byproduct known as 6-PPD quinone. That turns out to be the very thing that led to the decline of the coho salmon population in the Pacific Northwest.
If the microplastic pollution near the salmon spawning area is what led to their rapid decline, then what does that mean for us? As mentioned earlier, microplastics have been found in nearly everything.
In terms of health impacts of microplastics, especially human health, there's a lot of emerging research that's coming out about that, specifically about the presence of microplastics within our systems, because they've been found in things we consume such as salt, beer, drinking water. Do they potentially leach out different contaminants that may actually harm our human health?
Because of the environmental and health concerns, the City of Santa Barbara's Creeks Division wanted to know the specific levels of microplastic pollution on a local level.
Based on presentations and literature and media reports that we were seeing, we became concerned that microplastics might be an issue in creeks in Santa Barbara, and then the microplastics that would be discharged to the ocean. And so I reached out to several contacts at UCSB and got in touch with Dr. Patricia Holden, who we've already worked with extensively on other issues. And she was already studying microplastics and had a couple of graduate students who were already working on it. And so we put together a proposal that we submitted to the UCSB's Associated Students Coastal Fund, and they generously supported the project. The proposal that we submitted was to understand how large of an issue microplastics are in Santa Barbara, and specifically in creeks, and what are the concentrations during the different storm events, and also could we possibly reduce some of the microplastics getting to the creeks by some of our stormwater activities, especially street sweeping.
With the proposal submitted and approved, Becca and Tim Neat began their research.
So we like to begin our research with the story of how these pollutants may end up in our environment and the impact they can have. We had an awareness that these microplastics were somehow entering our oceans and ending up in our sediments there. And other literature in this field has shown that microplastics are conveyed through stormwater runoff, especially in an area with a lot of impervious surfaces, so concrete and asphalt. So we hypothesized that stormwater runoff could be a contributor of microplastics into our coastal oceans. And Jill considered the different management practices for pollution mitigation that the city already has in place. And street sweeping was a management practice of interest to understand if it was effective at reducing the concentration of microplastics entering our oceans. So we developed a research question which probed at that, how many microplastics were entering our oceans during stormwater runoff events, and how effective is street sweeping at reducing the number of microparticles that enter our oceans through stormwater runoff.
We've collected stormwater samples, and the city is collecting the samples, and unlike most of the times when we sample, we can't just collect a bottle. There's actually a pretty low concentration in the environment, and because of the methods that UCSB uses to quantify the amount of microplastics, we have to filter up to 100 gallons of sample of creek water every time we give them a sample.
And Timney and I used our methodological approaches in the lab to extract and isolate and chemically identify those microparticles. So that's through filtration, and then we use a fancy tool called a Fourier transform infrared spectrometer, which based on infrared light wavelengths can give us an idea of the chemical identity of the microparticle in question, so that we confirm yes or no whether or not it's actually a plastic or simply a microparticle.
The research did in fact show meaningful concentrations of microplastics in our local creeks after a storm event. What remains is understanding if street sweeping could be a good strategy in reducing micropollution in Santa Barbara.
We've collected samples from the street sweepers. We take a portion of that and also send that to UCSB, and we haven't learned the results of that yet. So if UCSB does find that there's a substantial amount of microplastic in the street sweeper debris, that gives us some good information that street sweeping could be an excellent method to tackle some of this pollution.
We're learning more and more about microplastics and microplastic pollution every day. Taking steps as a city to learn how to reduce micropollution here at home. But there are steps we all can take to reduce our own micropollution footprints.
When we have conversations about plastic pollution, there are a number of different ways that this issue can be addressed. And so I just encourage folks to consider what they are able to do based on their circumstances. Sometimes plastics are very necessary materials, which is why we've seen them become such a popular material in our industries and for consumers. So Timney and I are really focused on inclusive solutions to environmental problems and engaging and empowering individuals to take action to the extent that they're able to help.
Say no to a plastic bag when you're at a grocery store. Choose to reuse a plastic container, for example, that you may have purchased a couple of times before you throw it away. Recycle as best as you can as well. Follow those awesome recycling guidelines that are out there. Consider reduction a lot if you have the means to reduce your plastic consumption, as well as reuse. Another way that I think that you can certainly limit or rather contribute to the efforts on limiting plastic pollution, specifically microplastic pollution, is by talking to your legislators.
Every little bit helps, and it's really just up to your background and your level of ability to participate, and it's nothing to fear, but something to be aware of and something that we can all make a difference in reducing.
It's never too late to do your part to prevent microplastic pollution. For more ways to get involved, head to the city's website, santabarbaraca.gov/creeks. In our next story, we show you some new renovations at Bonet Park. See what's new as Mayor Randy Rouse cut the red ribbon to officially welcome guests.
Bonet Park, an essential for the Westside community, has seen families play since 1936. Donated by the Bonet family, this park serves as one of the few open spaces on the West Side. Recently, Bonet Park, under the canopy of its large, shady sycamore trees, hosted a ribbon-cutting ceremony to celebrate the completion and the reopening of the park after its renovation project.
All right, Bonet Park is open for business.
Bonet Park, the only park on the west side of Santa Barbara, went through a 5-month renovation project that started in October 2021. The last renovation in the park was done in 2016. This recent renovation project had 2 parts: park improvements and the creation of underground stormwater treatment facility. The project's design and development began 3 years ago. The Parks and Recreation Department and the Creeks Division collaborated on this renovation, as the Creeks Division was looking for a chance to create an underground stormwater treatment to improve water quality, and the Parks and Recreation Department was beginning to look into refreshing and updating the park itself to better accommodate community use. Funding for the renovation was provided by the Community Development Block Grant Program, La Cumbre Foundation, in the city of Santa Barbara. The stormwater improvement project was funded by hotel visitors through Measure B. Today, we celebrate with the West Side neighborhood the reopening of the new $1.9 million worth of improvement to Bonet Park. The second portion of the project is the addition of the stormwater filtration system to improve water quality of the water that flows into Old Mission Creek from the neighborhood and eventually making its way into the ocean. In 2003, the City Creeks Division restored riparian habitat, improved water quality with bioswales, and enhanced open space in the park.
First off, we've never done a project like this at the Creeks Division. We've done a lot of demonstration projects like the paver projects in the streets and the sidewalks and things like that. But we haven't done any of these underground chamber type projects where you're infiltrating stormwater under a play field or a parking lot, something like that. So it's pretty new for us. And that's why we did it. We wanted to use it as a demonstration project for the community, as well as treat, almost 6 acres of urban runoff. We've just never done one here, and doing one in the parks, they've done that in other places, and it's a kind of a cool thing because you've got a dual use. You can play on the field and you've got water quality treatment. So other water quality treatment devices sometimes require quite a bit of real estate in order to do it. But this, you've got a dual use, and so that's nice.
A new addition at Bonet Park is the ADA-approved facilities, like this wheelchair ramp behind me and more accessible pathways. The addition of facilities that are compliant with the Americans with a Disability Act allows for this park to be truly enjoyed by everyone.
New additions also include new picnic tables along Old Mission Creek, reservable picnic sites, barbecue grills and coal receptacles, trash and recycling containers, renovated bathrooms, streetscape fencing, new grass turf on the sports field, and irrigation and landscaping.
It's really important in this neighborhood because, as you can see, it's a relatively densely packed neighborhood in terms of how many people live here per acre. And so the outdoor spaces are even more important because this is where you don't have a back or a front yard. This is where the kids come, and this is where the kids meet, where they play soccer and they play basketball. And being outside is such a huge benefit, especially what we've gone through with COVID. The kids still have the masks on in school, so this is just a fabulous park. It's beautifully done, and it's just wide open. You can see it from everywhere, so it's a fabulous place for this neighborhood to have.
I have to say that what I really hope most of all is that through the summer, spring, fall season, that the neighborhood's able to come out and enjoy being outside and being with their families. It's been a rough 2 years for many people, so reopening this park, the goal is that people will be happy and be able to come out and rejoice that they can be outside.
It's such a cool location because not only is it a park, big open space, there's a playground, there's a creek, there's a Boys and Girls Club. This whole place is just an outlet for community members, family, kids to come together and play and be happy outdoors.
For the renovation, storm water would flow untreated into Old Mission Creek. The improved water quality will not only benefit people downstream enjoying the ocean, but improve wildlife habitat as well. The Westside community has now gotten a renovated park that will better serve the neighborhood and the young children who will grow up playing in this park for years to come.
I used to live in this neighborhood actually, and what excites me is just this broad open space. It's got all sorts of uses. Obviously, there's a playground back there for little kids. There's a wide open grass space for whatever kind of sport you want to play. Beautiful little kind of picnic areas over here. Real basketball courts with, glass backboards and great looking hoops. So there's just so much to offer here. It's just out here for everybody to use.
The park remains an important feature to the West Side and will get a ton of use. Congratulations to all the individuals who worked on the park improvements. Up next, a deal you won't want to miss. See how the city of Santa Barbara is now partnering with the La Cumbre Mutual Water Company to save water on the South Coast. And it's official. The City of Santa Barbara will now provide recycled water to the Cumbre Mutual Water Company, further building water resiliency and reliability on the South Coast.
This 25-year agreement that provides up to 100 acre-feet of water to our neighboring agencies of Cumbre Mutual Water Company. To put this volume of water in perspective, it's enough water annually to supply 350 homes in the city of Santa Barbara. So a significant milestone to move this around. And what I really appreciate is it's not often that you can deliver an agreement that is a win, 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 win. Like it's quite remarkable. Not only does this divert 100 acre-feet of water, treated wastewater going into the ocean, it saves 100 acre-feet of our drinking water. It utilizes existing city infrastructure and gets more bang for our buck. And it's a financial benefit not only to city customers, but to Cumbre customers. And this is, not the first time. We've been working with Cumbre for decades now. The city treats their state water, and we've also been in opportunities to assist them from time to time with drinking water and other projects. And we also, most people don't know this, we also share a groundwater basin with Cumbre. So we do have a shared interest in working cooperatively.
And a newly installed service connection has just been completed to deliver the recycled water to the largest customer of the Cumbre Mutual Water Company, the Cumbre Country Club.
During these times of drought, it's become especially important, projects with alternative sources of water for the club. And, there may be a day when we won't be able to put potable water on our fairways, and we'll be already set for that. We now have reclaimed water on our fairways, so that will save a lot of fresh water for everybody.
The recycled water will be used for golf course irrigation and will benefit both agencies because they share a groundwater basin. And less use of the groundwater means more water storage to meet the drinking water needs of the community.
I think we understand as a city and have the mission that we only have one water in our whole community, and if we can divert some of that water that would have gone out into the ocean and instead use it to water landscaping and in other ways, then we're really preserving our potable water and keeping that into the future as well.
Congratulations to both water agencies on your 25-year agreement. Well, that does it for this episode of Inside Santa Barbara. If you have questions or comments on the show, give City TV a call at 564-5311. Not to worry if you missed anything, you can watch us online at santabarbaraca.gov. I'm your host, Kalman, and remember, get involved inside Santa Barbara.